So I'm far from unique in the realm of public safety, but I have an official diagnosis that I received in my sophomore year of high school of ADHD and dyslexia. So I put it up on Instagram and Threads, and followers overwhelmingly said they would like a video about my strategies and struggles I've had along the way. So stay tuned. So first and foremost, it's worth mentioning, this is not a TikTok diagnosis. I was officially diagnosed after hours and hours of testing back when I was a sophomore in high school after a really long struggle in school before that point, and honestly, even after that point. The second thing is I'm not a mental health expert. I am not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. So everything I'm sharing with you is my perspective. Things that work for me might not work for you. Obviously, the human brain is really complex, and most of us, if you are suffering from something that shares the same name, probably have some variations in how that manifests for you. So I'm not going to blow your mind with this tip that's just going to, catapult your life beyond your wildest expectations. That's just not going to happen here. And then finally, don't get the impression that I have all my ducks in a row. I don't. I still mess up. I still have troubles. My wife and I still have fights about manifestations of this and kind of my own brain. So I don't have everything figured out. Please don't think I do. In fact, my last annual review from my boss basically said, thank goodness you are a good clinician and people like you, because your administrative tasks suck. You can't clock in and out on time. You're always forgetting that. You're not doing your quarterly education until the last minute. You're not doing the CQIs you should do. So basically it came out to I exceed expectations clinically and I don't meet expectations administratively. And they balanced out to meeting expectations in that review. So I just want to be totally transparent with you. So let's start with some of the struggles I had in school. So, I had trouble focusing on things. Now, I was not diagnosed with hyperactivity disorder back in the day. Back then it was ADD and ADHD. I had the ADD, and then they were merged in DSM 4 or 5. I forget which one. They were merged in there, and now it's all covered under ADHD. So I have that inattentive type. Although, totally admittedly, I just read through my diagnostic paperwork, and they do say that mine is not like standard presentation, but I still fall under that umbrella. And then I have dyslexia on top of that. So what they found is that I had a really hard time with encoding information, with basically executive functions. So things I struggle with a lot. I have a lot of trouble starting a task, even if it's an easy small task like sending an email or doing a CQI. Things that I know intellectually are really, really easy to do, and all I have to do is log in and do it. For whatever reason, I have this block and I don't do it. That's obviously a problem. Now, the other thing I have issues with is if there's instructions being given to me, if I, pull over and ask some old man for directions and he starts telling me street names, it is in one ear, out the other. I need to write it down. I need to have some other strategies that we're gonna talk about later. So classrooms are really hard for me when the instructor is going through something that's relatively complex. It's hard for me to hear what they're saying, even if I'm paying attention, take it into my brain and code it and actually store it as memory. That's something I struggle with. And then lastly, a thing that's really hard for me besides kind of standard troubles with reading and writing that come with dyslexia, I have trouble with letters and numbers and equating them to decoding them. So things like converting units in medicine is super relevant. A thing I struggled in school and caused me to fail 3 years of Spanish is foreign languages. I have a really, really hard time with foreign languages, even though I would really like to be good with that. So those are my struggles. In high school, I struggled a lot. Now, my parents knew I was smart. When I was 10 years old, I went, did the scuba certification, and I paid attention the whole time. I got great scores on the tests. I knew things better than a lot of the adults in the classroom. And that was one of the first things that cued them in. And not that they ever thought I was stupid, but like, hey, maybe this kid has something else going on besides just, not getting it. Because when I was stimulated intellectually, I was able to concentrate on things. So scuba, I really wanted to do that. So I paid a lot of attention to that. And that's when they kind of decided to, get me evaluated after a little bit more struggles. What that evolved into for me is this understanding of my own learning that if I was really interested in something, I could buckle down and I could learn it. It would take me a little bit longer, but I would do what I had to do to get that done. Now, things that don't interest me, emails, CQI, quarterly training, things like that, those things I have a lot of trouble with. Now, I understand like some of this is, hey, you kind of have to buckle down. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. I'm not making excuses for myself. That's what I'm trying to say there is, I do want to take responsibility for all of this. So what did I end up doing? So in high school, I ended up going on a medication. I went on Adderall, 20 milligrams extended release. And that actually made a pretty big difference for me in class. What I feel like when I took that Adderall, it kind of got rid of a lot of the surrounding things. It made kind of daily life quieter. And, I think those that get that, those that don't just won't. But it took away this kind of like babbling fuzziness around me and allows me to, when I fix my eyes on something, I can concentrate on that thing instead of kind of being divided all the time. So it really allows me to buckle down and do stuff. Now, next, they gave me the standard strategies, and honestly, this is why I'm saying this isn't groundbreaking. They worked for me when I do them, when I get the gumption to actually do them. So in high school, I got, a lot of help. I was catered to quite a lot, which honestly, it might have helped me in the moment, but I do not think it actually helped me in the real world. A lot of my, college and higher education experience came at a cost because I had to learn things the hard way a lot of times. So in high school, I had the individual learning plan or education plan, IEP, and I got extra time on tests. I got a case manager assigned to me. I got more materials given to me. I had time set aside by teachers to meet with me to let me go over more topics with them. And once again, that was great in the moment. Scored probably high average on the ACT at 27 on that. I got extra time. Like, I thought it was great. Now, enter the real world, and that's where kind of reality, hit me in the face. I got my EMT, I did my OEC and then my EMT while I was still in high school. Right when I got out of high school, I took the National Registry when I turned 18, and I really liked that because it was short-term classes. Like, these were not meeting all day long. They weren't going for semesters. It was like a semester's worth of work, and I was really, really stimulated by it. I loved it. I was interested in it. I studied for it. I did great in those. I had no difficulty through EMT class. Now, the program I was in put me through paramedic school next, and that was kind of one of my first, real tests of the real world. Now, in paramedic school, it's a lot longer. It's about, 2 years. The classes are a lot longer. I did the accelerated class. We were, in the classroom from 8 a.m. to, 4 p.m., 5 days a week. And then we had, clinicals, nights, weekends. And then we finally went into ride time, after that. So there's big sustained chunks of studying. Now, I still did well, but some of the things that I learned to do in paramedic school was, number one, and something that my wife has learned painfully over the years, is I just had to write everything down. So if I thought of something, if I thought of a question, if I had a task to do, if there was something coming up on my schedule, I had to write it down the second I thought of it. Even today, if I'm like, oh yeah, I need to remember to, pack this food thing for lunch tomorrow. No, it's fine. I'll remember it in the morning. I absolutely will not remember it in the morning. I need to write a checklist. I've got a honey-do list that my wife and I share on my phone. That's just, bullet points. Hey, I want you to do this, 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 and this, and I can always reference that to get it. So for me, that was a big game changer of just writing those things down. The other thing is understanding that since I'm not encoding that information, since I'm not receiving it well from lectures, and I've talked about this in the past, I had to study before the lectures about the lecture's contents. So I had to go through and start understanding these concepts. I didn't need a perfect understanding, but I had to at least be able to look at it and have a base level of knowledge. So I would read the chapter that we were going over the next day at night so that I'd come into that lecture and be able to get the full benefit of it instead of getting nothing from the lecture and then having to learn it all on my own through the textbook anyways. I found with textbooks and flashcards in particular, if I broke it down into tiny chunks, I was able to do a lot better. So, first and foremost, when I'm reading a chapter, I would say, hey, you're going to get through these 3 pages, and then you can take a break and do whatever you want. And I would forcibly put my phone somewhere else. I would make sure that there were no other distractions, wear headphones if I could. I later in life found that like lo-fi music really helped me without any lyrics. I could just put those on and kind of zone things out. So little chunks. Flashcards were great for that because I could just say like, hey, I'm going to do 5 flashcards and then I'm going to be done with this session and I'm going to go back to doing something else. So they're kind of like automatically breaking up learning. So if you're struggling with medications in paramedic school, which is where a lot of people struggle, is pharmacology, because it's just a lot of rote memorization of things you've never seen before, I highly suggest writing your own flashcards. Don't buy flashcards. Don't like go on Quizlet and get flashcards. Write them with your hands. Honestly, that's one thing that I think maybe not universal, but a lot of people will benefit from, just because you are encoding that information so much better if you're writing it down with your hands, not just typing it out or getting it from somebody else. That's part of the studying process. Now, with that, in the classroom, again, I was relatively stimulated by that learning because we do, lectures in the morning, skills lab in the afternoon. And then with that studying style, I found a lot of success. Where I met my first like academic failure, I'd say, was after that part of my program was going through an associate's degree in fire science. And I came into it flying pretty high on the, the paramedic train. I had my Fire 1, Fire 2, and like, honestly, if you have ADHD or anything like that, you're gonna be fine in Fire Academy because it's just a lot of physical work and a little bit of reading. But most of it's pretty common sense. I hope I'm not, offending any firefighters out there, but like in terms of academic rigor, Fire Academy is not like this crazy thing, all right? So I got into the associate's degree, and this was my first like experience with kind of real adult learning. Paramedic school is still very regimented. You were in class, you're not doing it online, or at least when I went through it. It is very much, you sit here, you do this, these are the tasks assigned to you, this is everything laid out and handed to you. Again, this is coming back to things being handed to me in high school. I don't think it did me any favors later on. So in these classes, the first one I enrolled in was like building construction. It was online, and then I had like 2 in-person classes. And, I like got zeros on my first 3 assignments, I think, for the online class. And I blamed the teacher for it. I was like, oh man, you didn't tell me that I had these assignments here. I don't know why, like whatever. And I sent this nasty email, and they're like, yeah, like you could read the syllabus and you could, actually take some initiative in the class, because it's all clearly laid out there, and you didn't do this thing that would have taught you how to do it. And like, it was absolutely my fault. And same with one of my in class topics. I think it was like psychology or something like that. And I just wasn't paying attention. I wasn't doing good. I wasn't interested. And all of those strategies that I had been cultivating fell by the wayside because I was not motivated to do it. And that's a me problem. So one thing, this is tough love, all right? Because a lot of people going into EMS are coming in from high school where things are catered to you, they are handed to you. And the first piece of advice I have for you when you enter a workplace or college is that your learning disability, your ADHD, that's a you problem. That is not a school's problem. That is not an employer's problem. That is a you problem. I don't care what the ADA says. I don't care, what you're, entitled to there. Like, there is things that should happen and things that do happen. And in the real world, things get left out. People don't follow the ADA. And I'm not saying that employers shouldn't do that. But what I'm saying is that if you're coming to your employer and you're saying, hey, I've got this learning disability, I have ADHD, you better be coming to them with an accommodation in mind. Don't just be like, I have this, what are you going to do for me? Because that's not going to do anything for you, all right? So when you come and you bring it to your employer, which, use your judgment. They shouldn't discriminate against you, but we all know that, there are employers that absolutely will, and they'll look for an excuse to get you out. So I'm not saying you have to, but if you're coming to them, have a solution already in mind. Like, hey, like, would you, supply me with headphones or something like that? Or I don't even know, because I don't have any accommodations in my workplace because I haven't asked for them. there. But understand that when you get to the real world, this isn't a classroom. Like, you have a job to do, and you have to be able to do that job just as well as your peers. Like, whatever you have to do it, but it's a you problem. You need to take responsibility for it and implement the strategies you have. If you need cognitive behavioral therapy or something like that, you go and get that. So all of that is to say, take responsibilities for your actions and your attitudes when you come to the workplace. The real world is far less forgiving and cares a lot less about you than high school does. The second part of this is understanding that some of your difficulties with, ADHD and a learning disability in the classroom might not translate to the real world. EMS is great for people with ADHD because it allows you to use that disordered focus that we have, that hyper focus that you can get in something that's stimulating, because basically what you're doing is, for most of the day, you have nothing going on. Like, you're sitting at the station, you can work out, you can go do these other things. You don't have to focus on anything specifically for a majority of the day. And then you get these really high octane calls. Like, even a really boring call, you still get tones, you're still driving to it, your heart rate goes up, you get that adrenaline rush, and you can hyper focus on that patient for the next 20 minutes of your transport or whatever it is, and get them to the hospital successfully. So don't think that just because you struggled in your classes that is necessarily going to translate into the real world. What I will say about that is that you still need the knowledge. Like, you're not just going to magically understand what the contraindications and indications of fentanyl are when you get to the real world, as opposed to when you were learning it in the class. So you still have to learn that knowledge, but don't equate struggle with a successful outcome to being dumb or not being successful in the real world. As far as the administrative tasks that you're going to have to do in any EMS job, there's always administrative tasks to do. I wish I had a solid answer for you. I guess the best thing I can say is that everything I have is in my iCal. So if you go into my calendar there, I have a ton of stuff, and this is how I organize everything. So my schedule automatically gets imported in there. If I'm doing anything for a day, have a meeting, have an assignment due. When I was doing my undergrad, I linked the syllabuses into my calendar. That's something that their Canvas thing allowed me to do. And I had all of my deadlines right on my phone. I have those same things importing from Ninth Brain, which my service uses for online education for my quarterly training in there. Everything goes straight to that calendar, and that's how I organize things. And then I also share that calendar with my wife so she can see everything I have going on, and she can add things to my calendar if there's something that she wants me to remember. So for me, like, that kind of helps with some of those administrative tasks. Some of the other ones, like responding to emails, any company that works with me on PrepMedic knows that it can be frustrating, because they'll send me 3 emails and I won't get back to them for a week and a half because I have this weird avoidance thing with it. That's something I haven't figured out all the way, and I am always looking for new strategies or ways to make that happen. Now, coming up for me, I've enrolled in a master's program. I'm taking the critical care paramedic program through Monash University. And, it's a pretty rigorous course of study for 3 years. So I haven't taken medication since, I want to say, I don't know, halfway through paramedic school, I think I stopped taking the medication. And a big reason I stopped taking it, not, this isn't accurate, right? But this is where my head went, is that I was taking this medication and I started to feel like I was incapable of doing what I was doing if I was on the medication, or if I wasn't on the medication. I started to feel like it's this crutch, and I need to prove to myself that I can actually do these things without being on a drug. And that is still a mindset that I struggle with. That is still something that gives me some, I guess, shame to kind of admit where I'm coming from next, is that with this course of study coming up for Monash University, I submitted all my paperwork and had my PCP put me back on Adderall to help me through this next educational phase. So, being totally transparent with you, I still feel some shame with that. I still feel like, well, you're just being, lazy. You could do it if you really put your mind to it there. But With, the demands of, full-time work, like 3 side gigs, 2 kids, a wife that's incredibly busy, this YouTube channel, and then like all these other side projects I have going on, I felt like I needed some help there. So, so I've gone back on the medication, to try to, help with that transition, and to help through that educational hurdle that I have to come to. So, with that, like I've said like 5 times now, is like this is still something that like I try to deal with. And I don't talk about it a lot. I don't tell people about it because like a lot of times when you're talking about learning disability, something like that, it comes across as, lazy. It comes across as an excuse for, not doing the thing that you're expected to do. And understand when you take a job and you sign on that line for the job description, you're agreeing to do the things the job description says. Like, again, I circle back to taking responsibilities for your actions and your attitude. If there's something in that job description that you can't do, like you need to figure out how to do it, because it's not like, a dyslexic paramedic, like all of a sudden doesn't have to know these things in the back of the ambulance. You have to be performing at or above the level of your peers at all times. And, there's really no tolerance for somebody that's not able to do the job. And if you're not able to do the job, that sucks. Like try to get help, try to see if it's actually true, or if you just haven't found the right set of strategies for you. So, got a little bit rambly at the end. Like I said, I know that this is not a groundbreaking video. At the very least, if you're struggling with these things, I consider myself to have a pretty successful career. Have a bachelor's degree, paramedic, been doing this for a long time, have, gotten into the critical care flights world, have done things that I'm really proud of. So I hope you can see this and, at the very least know that you're not alone in this world, and that a lot of people in EMS struggle with ADHD. The last thing I'll leave you with is like my boss, I say all the time, she has weaponized ADHD. Like she is just absolutely bouncing off the walls, doing a million different things, but she has somehow figured out how to be totally successful with it. Like she gets things done. She's not half finishing projects. She's up until 1 a.m. every night because she can't sleep. She's got a lot of insomnia. She is always, calling, texting, emailing, figuring these things out, and it's a lot, but she is so effective at what she does, and she has done a lot in her career. So not just, from me, who I'd consider to have, pretty little bit more than mild, but, moderate symptoms, as it comes to somebody like her, who's like what I would say is severe symptoms, you can be successful in this realm. So with all of that being said, if you have strategies, things that have helped you, leave them in the comments down below, or just questions, happy to answer them. And I will see you next week.